background here, this was not something that Aric asked for. It's actually not something he was even aware of. This is a decision that I made to do this monument. And the reason for it was that, as you all know, Aric's life was cut short by a terrible disease. He could have easily worked another 15, 20 years and made a lot more great buildings and probably gotten a lot more notoriety and fame, but that was unfortunately taken from him. So for me, it was important to both get his archives and his personal libraries donated to museums and institutions, which we were luckily successful to do in its entirety. But I also felt it would be important to get someplace where the public could know about him, the general public, more than just the intellectual community. And so I approached Graceland, and we were able to secure this site. Just to give you some background, the cemetery used to have all these 3-foot paths that ran through all of the sections that were used for horse carts and such in the 19th century. They stopped using them when mechanical equipment became available, and only recently they decided to sod them over and make them available for monuments and or ashes, not for burials. And we got first pick. We were one of the first people to select one. And I said to them, what have you got by the lake? And they gave me some options, and here we are. It's remarkable, actually. The luminaries that are surrounding, if you look at the map, and if you wander around, you'll see more that are not mentioned on the map. To me, makes this a really important moment for Aric to be given an opportunity to be included in the historical record of Graceland Cemetery. And that was my primary motivation to do this. I'm just really glad that it worked out. And Sam Roche here, who was Aric's co-author and colleague and very dear friend over the years, designed this. And he can talk a little bit about the design process, the meaning of the symbolism of it, and we can also talk about the Latin inscription as well. But I'll hand it over to Sam.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, okay. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, not having Bert's good impromptu skills and memory, I wrote some notes, but I'm not going to read from them. I just want them here if I need them, and they're not all of these pages, just a couple. So the design, for me and maybe for the designers here, the goal is really that you don't have to talk about it, right? So that it will explain itself a little bit. But I'll just start by saying that the motif, as some of you may already know, is Aric's motif, and it comes from. If I start getting low, you just like do this, and then I'll go back up. It's from a book plate of his, and it's an hourglass with the sand draining out, and an inscription in Latin made by his friend, composed for him, and translated it means "time respects that made with time." And so that motif is the theme of the memorial, and so the hourglass is here, and the inscription is carved around here, around the drum here. The rest of the monument situates the theme, right? And so how does it do that? It does it basically as a collection of objects, identifiable objects, starting from the ground up and going from, I'd call this the restated ground, right? And then going up from a block to things that get slightly more figured until you get to the most figural, which is the hourglass, the most figural and the most iconic, right? And then it's also a set of symbols. So this being, again, the main and most important symbol, the column being the second symbol. And what is a column? First of all, it's a broken column, and a broken column is a symbol of a life cut short. It's a traditional symbol of that. And also a column itself, and I'm looking to see if there are any examples.
Right over there.
It's a support for something else. Not necessarily an entablature like you see here, but sometimes you'll see a column with an urn on top, right? So here the column is a little support for the hourglass itself, right? And then the main goal here really is to get this up at the right height and the right size, so it's not too big and it commands the whole thing, but it isn't necessarily the largest thing because it needs to feel precious also, so it needs to feel like an object with the rest. Basic influences are classical, and what does that mean? The collection of objects that are all identifiable is the main classical way to make a sort of object monument. And this is a really good example. You see it's all doing the same thing. Starts with like this very basic block, and then it gradually, slowly gets more figural until you've got a sarcophagus draped on top, right? And so you can see the little plinth of the sarcophagus with the wreaths is like, it's a more figural version of the thing below it. But the idea is that everything, you could divide all that into a bunch of different objects and take them apart, and it's the way they're put together that makes them classical, I would call it, both unified and in pieces. There's a specific influence to this design also, which is that of an English architect named Sir Edward Lutyens, who was a great love of Aric's and mine and other people in the firm, and I would say probably every serious designer eventually grapples with Lutyens and probably comes to love him, at least of a certain character, right? So Aric had that character. He loved Lutyens. We used to talk about him all the time. And this is a Lutyens motif, this little like pillow-shaped plinth here. All right, and then the third influence is the Chicago influence, and I would call that something like the most straightforward and simple version of the classical. And so here that's represented by this first plinth. I originally had something there that was a little more elaborate, and then Gary Ainge, another collaborator and friend and colleague of Aric, said, oh, we should just make that a block. And indeed, there it is, and it's exactly, I think, what it should be. So a sort of hybrid set of influence that all represents something like what we all shared with Aric and knew of him, and I think those are some of his main influences. Just very quickly, how the design was realized. It was realized by every part of it being right all the time, all the way. Which is how every good thing works, as you come to find out. Yeah. All right, so what does that mean? Bert talked a little bit about the site. We're all standing here shaded under these two trees at either end, with this right in the middle, in the best part of the cemetery, across from the lake, with all of the famous architects and the best monuments and notables all buried around here. So it's got a great site. It had input from designers and makers who knew Aric and shared some of his passions. So it's very easy collaboration, and that includes not only the people I've mentioned so far, myself, Gary, but also the makers of this monument. The company's called Quora, and they worked with Aric and Aric's firm on many projects, including inscriptions. So, and they knew Aric very well, and they were glad, I think, without speaking for them, to be a part of it.
I'll talk a little bit about
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Fine. So we had a very easy collaboration with everybody. But foremost among those collaborators is the commissioner of the work, Bert. And what did Bert have? He had the will to build this thing. He chose this site. He put the team together. He shepherded the whole design process all along the way. Any of you who've worked with Bert, which now I have the great pleasure to say I have, he's just a very great facilitator of what needs to happen and when, and with the right sense of urgency at the right time, and you're just going to do it right then. It was just great. It was a pleasure, Bert. Thank you. And Bert gave input on the design as well, the sizing of the text, how big it was here, what the font was. That was all Bert. The font and description and size of this text and placement, all with Bert. Finally, materially, Bert paid for this monument. He made this. He materially supplied or provided this all for Aric and all of us. And I'll just tell one little story. We got to the very end. You can imagine something like this. The cost seemed very high to me. Seemed very expensive to me. And we got to the end, and we made these little models, little renderings of someone standing next to it, and we sent it to the team, and we just said, if it were just 20% bigger, we think it would really make a difference. And the choir Rebecca said, okay, that's this much more. And Bert just went, yes, do it. But 5 minutes later, less than that, whatever. So finally, I think that what made this right is the power of Aric's motif. Right, and everyone just working to deliver Aric's voice for his memorial, and it makes Aric the central figure, and maybe it's through all of our regard and even love for Aric that it ultimately turned out, and it felt like a very smooth path all along the way, and indeed it felt like the path had been made smooth for us. and it felt like it had been made smooth for us from outside of us. So make of that what you will. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to just add one comment to what Sam said. To talk about the fabricator at Forest Stone, the owner of the company, Jim
Louder,
Durham,
louder.
knew Aric well. They worked together for many years. Jim Durham was the owner of Forest Stone, the company that made the monument. He and Aric had worked together for many years, I think starting with Bass, probably. So Bass Library at Yale University. He did most of their stone projects went through Quarry, if I'm not mistaken. And Jim said something really interesting to me when I proposed this for him to make this for us. He said, well, Aric used to come to us with these drawings and he'd show us this stuff and we were like, can we do that? Because they were so elaborate and complex. And he said he pushed us to do things we never thought we could do. And he had so much respect for him and worked with him over quite a number of years. So he said to me, it would be my honor to make this monument for you, and I will do it at my cost. Because he felt so, honored to do it, I suppose. That didn't make it cheap. Had he not done that, I might not have been able to do it. So it was really a great gift to have that opportunity. Just briefly, I will point out, Eric's sister Sherry is here. Eric's name is in the front. When the time comes, it's likely my name will be on one side and hers will be on the other. We have yet to see how and when that might happen. But Sam pointed out that Aric is the central figure of this, and the idea is that it would describe our relationship to Aric, but it would still be about Aric primarily, and that's fine for us. We are fine with that. Yeah, and Gary, I think you had something to say?
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Wasn't able to be at the memorial last year, and we were out of the country. So,
Oh, right, I remember.
Yeah, so-
Make sure to speak up.
Okay.
Loud, Gare.
All right.
Yeah.
So, those who don't know me, I'm Gary Ainge, and Aric and I were partners in our architectural firm, and it was a real pleasure. It was a real honor for me to be Aric's partner among other partners. I don't think it was until after Aric returned back to our office. I came in '84. I think Aric came in '85. He left, worked at a few other firms, did some great work, and then ultimately went and did wonderful films. And probably many of you are aware of that. And then ultimately came back to us. But I don't think I was really fully aware of his brilliance and artistry until he actually came back to our firm at that time. It was also his humor and leadership abilities. He was quite remarkable. And every project that had Aric's involvement was made profoundly better by his participation. Over the years, Aric provided drawings and design work for Yale, Notre Dame, Northwestern, University of Virginia, Arkansas, many other wonderful clients, and very important work. And regardless of the style, Aric's mastery of architectural language provided nuanced and sophisticated expression to each and every project, with refined details that were both appropriate and imaginative. He was brilliant. And although I miss him tremendously, I know that Aric's work will continue to thrill and inspire generations to come, people who are able to experience those buildings. And it was truly my honor and pleasure to work with Aric, and more importantly, to call him a very dear friend. Now, I also want to read this from Gail Catlin, who was our office manager, and she couldn't be here today due to some health issues. Now, especially since you're recording this, remember, this is Gail saying this, okay? So I've already read this, so I know what's coming. Whenever Aric came to the HBRA office, he would typically stop at my desk to share something silly, which would always bring me to tears. Well, after months, years of having to go to the bathroom to wash off disgusting mascara, streaming down my face, I finally stopped wearing eye makeup altogether forever. My mascara was fine. Eyelashes were no match to spending time listening to Aric's witticisms. Aric remains my dearest, wise friend because he knew the necessity of sharing fun. I got so lucky. I met Aric. I love Aric. And that's from Gail.
If anybody else would like to come up and say anything, you're welcome to at this time. Otherwise, we can just mingle and hang out and enjoy the site. Okay, great. Thank you all. Thank you, sir. Thank you.